Hello! Today I'm 3 weeks late, going to be going through the 5,000 subscriber special Ask Me Anything video and just answering the questions that all of you have sent in. This is going to be unscripted, off the cuff. I'm just going to give my answers as best as I can on the spot. So I've ordered the comment section with the newest comments at the bottom, and we'll just go up and, hopefully get through all the comments. So we'll start here at the bottom with Jaden Robert. Jaden Robert asks, a bunch of questions. We'll start with, is mayonnaise an instrument? Well, there's a lot of different views in the philosophy of language about how words get their definition. And this question here comes down to what's the definition of instrument? Well, I think evidence that a word is defined a particular way is the way people use that word. And if we look at the usage of the word instrument, very few people use the word instrument to refer to mayonnaise. So I think there's powerful evidence that mayonnaise is not an instrument based off of our usage. So I'm going to say probably not. The next question is, are you a minimalist or a maximalist, referring to the resurrection argument? Now, I find this question kind of odd because, as a Bayesian, it falls just kind of out of my epistemology that the more information that you update on, the more accurate your beliefs are going to be. So the minimalist is my understanding of the term minimalist in reference to the resurrection argument is somebody who instead of digging into the weeds of gospel reliability, just sticks with scholarly consensus and the facts that have reached scholarly consensus. Now, why would you stick with that, though? I mean, I think that you should look into as many arguments as possible. Look into what reasons there are to think that the Gospels are reliable. Look into all the reasons to think that the Gospels are unreliable. Look into what points the scholars disagree on and see where you land on those topics. If you're being a good Bayesian, you're just going to want to seek out not just what the scholarly consensus is, but what the reasons are for that scholarly consensus and whether or not you align with them, whether you think they're making a mistake or you're making a mistake. You want to dig into this issue as much as possible. So as an epistemological approach, I don't see why you would stick with scholarly consensus. But maybe if you want to represent the argument, then I think it's actually contextual. Are you talking with somebody who just is very uninformed with about the resurrection argument, the case for the resurrection, and you just need to quickly convince them that this is something worth looking into? Then maybe the minimal facts case for the resurrection would work better. But if you have all the time in the world, then you should give somebody all the information that you have when you're discussing the resurrection. So you should be a maximalist. I don't know if that's a good answer because basically it's a weird question to me because it seems maximalism as an epistemological approach just falls out of my preferred epistemology. Anyways, is water wet? Well, see, I think that the way the word wet is used actually varies from person to person. I've heard both sides on this issue, so I feel less comfortable appealing to common usage about the is water wet question. So I'm just going to give an analytical, very analytic philosophy-esque type answer. The word wet applies to anything such that on its surface there is water. Now, if we take the surface of, say, a lake or any other body of water, and we draw out its surface, there will be no water on top of it, because if there was water on top of that surface, well, then it would have actually been part of the object that we were taking the surface of. Like a lake, if there was a drop of water on a lake, well, no, then it's just part of the lake. So then water can't be wet because, it's just going to become part of the thing. So I guess that's where I'll say I'll stand. Next question. What do you think the best objection to causal finitism is? Okay, so causal finitism, the arguments for causal finitism are not purely deductive. They rely on intuitive principles, like the patchwork principle. And if I were a naturalist, I'd just say, hey, denying these, no matter how intuitive these principles are, I think I'm fine to deny them because, my intuitions here seem to be trained by evolution for contexts where there's just finitely many causes and effects, and that's what my intuition's been trained on. So yeah, I'm fine with saying that my intuition has gone wrong here, and I'll just deny your patchwork principle premise or whatever non-logically deductive premise you have there, because like causal finitism arguments need premises that don't just follow deductively from the other premises. So yeah, just bite the bullet on whatever patchwork principle there is and give a reason why that's okay. That's the way I think the best objection is. Now, how do you get started in philosophy of religion is the next question. I think apologetics is a good way to get into philosophy of religion. Like, take the Kalam, for example. If you study the Kalam, you'll be tangentially researching, like, God's relationship to time, the attributes of God, like, spaceless, timeless, immaterial, those sorts of attributes of God. You just start. That was a terrible impression. I'm sorry, Dr. Craig, if you're listening, which you're not, but it's fine. If you just study apologetics, you get kind of automatically, you start learning philosophy of religion as well. The two are very close, hand in hand. And if you want to start learning apologetics, just pick an argument that looks cool and just start studying the responses to the argument and the responses to those responses. So I guess that's my suggestion on how to get into philosophy of religion. So yeah, I don't know if there's one size fits all answer, but there's a concrete answer. Will you do written debates in the future like the one between Cameron and Rationality Rules? Yeah, sure. I have difficulty finding time for projects like, this video, but I'm not in any way opposed to it. Yeah, I'd be open to doing a written debate. If you're somebody who's interested in doing a written debate with me, shoot me an email. I'll see if we could work something out, but no promises. What do you think about the digital physics argument for the existence of God? Well, okay, my understanding of the digital physics argument is that quantum physics can kind of get us to idealism, and idealism can get us to theism. And I'm not really sure about either step. Like, there are a lot of idealists who are not theists, and there are a lot of people who have, lots of people who have studied quantum physics without becoming idealists. So, if I wanted to run the I haven't studied either of these steps very much in depth. I have not studied quantum physics in depth. I've not studied idealism in depth. But, from the face of it, I just see that, there are tons of hurdles I need to jump over before getting this getting this argument off the ground. So it looks like a very daunting argument to actually, wield successfully. But, I mean, it looks cool. And all the videos about it have, really cool animations. So, yeah. Sorry, some people find my humor too dry. I hope I don't come across as too dry. Anyways, will you do an in-depth video responding to animal suffering? Yes, I plan to, in my cumulative case series, go through arguments against theism, and animal suffering is pretty good one, pretty good objection to go over. I definitely want to read Trent Dougherty's book on the topic though before getting into that, because I've heard amazing things about Trent Dougherty's book. So yes. Anyways, Jane and Robert seems to have some more questions down here. They ask, if you have a position on the is water wet debate, will you make an argument for your position and put it in a syllogism and make it look fancy? Possibly. I don't have a lot of time right now. Maybe. Jane and Robert also asks, if babies come from the stork, where did the stork come from? Well, we've just established that, that causal finitism is totally false. So there's just an infinite regress of storks. That's the answer. They also ask, will you make a bookshelf tour for all of us lay people looking for resources on topics? I use them because I'm unaware of many staple works, and it is good for becoming aware of them and making me poor. So I don't really have much of a bookshelf because I have some books, 24 or so arguments for God. I have Proust's book on the Principle of Sufficient Reason. I have Logic and Theism by Sobel. I have some books, but I I don't have a lot because like I have a computer that could just store more books and lots of books way more efficiently than a bookshelf can. So I don't know if a bookshelf tour would be great. I do like the idea though of sharing like staple works. That might be a good video idea. But yeah, I don't have lots of books in physical form, so I can't really do a bookshelf tour like that. It's also having virtual books. I don't know. I just find it like easier to read. I know lots of people don't find that they like the paper, but I don't know. Maybe it's because like you could put like an audio player, and then I could like do some work while I just listen to the book play in the background. And Jane Robert finally says, "I appreciate the hearts." Oh, thank you. I appreciate giving them out. Okay. Let me explain. Followers of the Shepherd, parenthetical, says, "Congrats on 5K. That is amazing. What is the worst argument, in your opinion, for God?" That's probably going to be Descartes' argument, ontological argument. What you have is premise 1, God has all perfections. Premise 2, existence is a perfection. 3, conclusion, therefore, God exists. And this argument, it like in the English language, it sounds valid and each premise seems obviously true. So it's like, is this a powerful argument? But then you like convert it to first order logic and then you're like, oh, no, it's not a powerful argument. Basically, the details of it, like you can go into the first order logic and show this, but either the conclusion that you're saying is either that all gods in existence exist, or premise 1 is just saying that God exists. That God has all perfections. You're just saying there is a God and he has all perfections. So like it's a argument that looks like it works, but Descartes made it before we had first order logic. But once you use first order logic to analyze it, it just completely falls apart. So it has zero evidential weight. Even arguments that I think are like really bad, I think they provide at least like a minuscule amount of evidential weight usually, but this one is just like no evidential weight at all. Anyways, let me explain asks another question. Recently in an interview with Pints with Aquinas, nitpick, Inspiring Philosophy said that he believed the ontological argument to be less impressive than when he once looked at it. Do you believe it to still be a good argument, and why do people doubt it now? So I think that it's not a great argument. So why most people don't believe it's a strong argument is I think they're thinking of Plantinga's ontological argument, and he doesn't really give a full argument. Like in my mind, he just shows that like the metaphysical possibility of God entails God's actual existence, which is really important. And like that's like really huge to consider, but like it's not an argument for God. Like there aren't many people who are going to be antecedently committed to the metaphysical possibility of God, but are going to be like questioning God's existence. Like once you understand the concept of metaphysical possibility, like I mean, if you're a naturalist and you don't understand the concept of metaphysical possibility, as soon as you do get a handle on that, you're going to just go, oh yeah, it's not metaphysically possible that God exists. So it's like, that's what most people are thinking of, I think, when they think of the ontological argument. And it's not really much of an argument until you like start giving arguments for why one should think that it's metaphysically possible that God exists. I think more generally, ontological arguments aren't incredibly strong, because basically what I outlined with the causal finitism response earlier on is probably going to apply to almost every ontological argument. So you can't go from deductive logic alone to God exists. Like you can't apply modus ponens and disjunctive elimination and all these different logical inferences over and over and get to the existence of God. You're going to have to use premises that do not derive from the laws of logic. And once you do, like in ontological arguments, everything's supposed to be a priori, so you're just going to like appeal to intuitions, and then the naturalist can like give some account of why their intuition's actually misfiring here. So I think that it's not a very like ontological arguments in general are not going to be super strong. D replied saying, I saw a video between Capturing Christianity and some philosopher who sadly passed away young. Listening to it, it seemed very fallacious. It just feels too easy, and anyone familiar with rigorous arguments knows that that is a bad sign. Okay, so I'm not totally on board with this comment. I think that, like, ontological arguments in principle can work. Like, if you find a super intuitive premise and it entails, like, the existence of God, and the naturalists, for whatever reason, cannot actually succeed in giving, like, an undercutter for their intuitions there, then yeah, that would work. That would give, like, substantial evidence to the existence of God. But, you see, that hasn't happened yet. Anyways, moving on. Andro Risk. I hope that's like risk. I'm just going to say risk. Andro Risk asks, what is your favorite non-traditional, as in not the resurrection, argument for Christianity? Do you have any resources on it? Do any resources exist? I'd like to specify this is arguments for Christianity as a whole and not theism. Thank you and congrats. Thank you, Andro. Andro. I said Andro. So the argument I like the best that's not traditional resurrection argument is the argument from the popularity of Christianity. I have a video on it because I thought of it. Basically, I take what naturalists and atheists, what they say about divine hiddenness, and they say, like, hey, God would want to be in a relationship with everyone, and he isn't. And I say, hey, yeah, I think that's right. So which argument does this, which religion does this argument hurt the least? Well, it's going to hurt the religion the least that has the most followers of it. And wouldn't you know, globally throughout history, and in the present day, that would be Christianity. So yeah, like another way to put it is more intuitive is like, hey, if there was a God, do you think he'd establish like a true religion and like make sure that this religion became widespread? Yeah. Hey, what's the most widespread religion? Christianity. Boom. That's the gist of it. I have a video going into it. I kind of came up with this in like on my own, so I don't have any more resources than my video on it, but like, yeah, that's my favorite non-traditional argument for Christianity. Let me explain. Has some more questions. They ask, what is your opinion on polytheism? Is it possible or perhaps logically fallacious? I'd love to hear your perspective on it. So it depends on what we mean by polytheism here. And it also depends on what we mean by possible. So in the sense of possible, meaning just there is no contradiction in it, yeah, I think polytheism is logically possible. Like if you lay out almost any form of polytheism, I can't find a contradiction in it. Is it metaphysically possible? Well, I think like, okay, then it depends on what we mean by polytheism. Like if we just mean like there are a bunch of superpowered beings, I mean, yeah, I think it's metaphysically possible that God makes like a bunch of superpowered beings. So, but would that count as polytheism? Because like they are all like just round down to zero next to like, you know, the true triune God. So I'm not really sure on like how to evaluate. If we talk about like just a bunch of necessary beings that all have a status roughly similar to the triune God, I don't think that's metaphysically possible. I think it's logically possible because there's no like internal contradiction in it. Yeah, so I guess I need I'm being such an analytic philosopher. I'm saying it depends what you mean by all these terms. But yeah, it really does. It depends on what you mean by polytheism and what you mean by possible. Next question. What is your opinion on the death penalty as a Christian? I know many seem to agree with it, but I've always thought living in prison should be better, as then they may be saved. What do you think? Okay, so when I originally said that if somebody asks me a political question, I'm going to make up an answer, I was thinking like, oh, if somebody asks me about taxes, I'm going to say, oh yeah, taxes they should be like 12,000% and just give a funny answer. This is not a question I want to give a joke about. Like, I mean, I'm avoiding political questions. That's why I included it in there, but I'm just going to break the rules and skip this question because I just wanted to avoid political questions. And I'm not making something up to make light of this question because it is a serious question and deserves serious thought. Anyways, Joseph Wayne Corrigan says, yeah, let's go squared. Yeah, let's go, Joseph. Yeah, thank you for your comment. Philosophically inclined Christian Crusader says, what's your thoughts on the scholastic thinkers like Aquinas, Scotus, and Suarez? Suarez? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I'm not very familiar with Suarez person. I think they made like huge contributions to like the field of theology and, just philosophy more broadly. But I mean, I'm not a classical theist. I'm what you would call a neoclassical theist. So I ultimately disagree with these guys. I think their models were very helpful and improved the field a lot, but are ultimately wrong. I guess maybe an analogy might be like Isaac Newton. Like he came to physics and like provided a bunch of insight, improved the field a whole bunch, but like his theory wasn't technically right. I mean, it was close. I think like Thomas Aquinas's models of theism is way closer than like, naturalism, or like Thomas Aquinas's model of the world is like miles ahead of naturalism. But like, I think it's ultimately wrong. I think there's a bit of a better model out there in neoclassical theism. Anyways, moving on, Ron Rontal says, "Hi Squared, thank you for your videos. They are very interesting and entertaining. I like the arguments for existence of God, and Kalam argument is great. Just having a question, one of the premises of this argument is everything that began to exist has a cause. Naturalistically speaking, things begin to exist in physical time. There was a moment when the thing didn't exist, then there is a moment when it appeared and is existing, but the physical time began to exist with the beginning of the universe. So naturalistically speaking, even if the universe has a beginning, there wasn't a period of physical time when the universe didn't exist. Can we still say that universe began to exist, even if naturalistically we can observe only the universe which is already existing from the first moments of physical time, and there is no moment in the physical time when it didn't exist? What could you say if someone raised that objection, and how would you show that the beginning is still taking place? Please feel free to reformulate my question in a better way if needed." Okay, so my takeaway is like, hey, when we say something begins to exist, we're saying, okay, there's a moment such that it does exist and a prior moment where it didn't exist. So that definition cannot apply to the beginning of the universe because there's no prior moment to the beginning of the universe, so we can't really say that the universe began to exist. What do we do? Well, there's a fairly straightforward solution. What you do is you say there is a moment where the universe began to exist, or sorry, I should rephrase that. The way we define the term begins to exist is we just say something begins to exist if it exists at a moment, and there is no other moment prior to that moment where it existed. So that wouldn't change the way we use that word, or sorry, that term in any other context. It would just make sense of us saying that the universe began to exist. Because prior to the first moment of the universe, there was no moment where the universe existed. So the universe began to exist. This does throw a wrench into timelessly existing things that enter into time like God, because then on that definition, God began to exist. So you have to like stipulate, okay, besides things that existed timelessly and entered into time, this is what counts as beginning to exist. But yeah, that's a way to get around it. Craig talks about this a lot, so yeah, that's why I gave the answer that I did. It's the answer Craig gives. Logical Liberty says, "Congrats. 1. Will you get a chance to respond to Naturalism Next blog post criticizing psychophysical harmony argument?" Yes, I do want to do that. Although, hear me out. I want to first try and make another video explaining the argument. I know. I've made a couple of those. I want to try again. I think that I have to go down to like the core base concepts in philosophy to actually like build up this argument, because people just aren't getting it. I need to like come at this argument from another angle to try and explain it. So once I do that and like actually get like more people on the page of understanding it, then I'll like go to these like objections that are started to crop up. But yeah, I should probably respond to this blog post, because I'll say they kind of call me out. Like they're like, hey, they don't actually say this, but they're kind of like, hey, Squared, it's not as powerful as you think. Actually, no, I shouldn't say they kind of do this. At one point, they explicitly like reference my video and say it's not as powerful as this guy thinks. The argument from psychophysical harmony, so I should probably respond to their objections, because I have some things up my sleeve. Like I have some responses to the they bring up good points, but I have some responses, so I should respond to that. Anyways, 2, do you believe in abstract objects like numbers, propositions, and universals? And no, I don't really buy the arguments for those. I'm more of a nominalist. 3, it seems like the best, only reason to accept moral realism is ultimately an appeal to intuition. But many people genuinely don't have intuitions that things are stance independently right, wrong, good, bad, including me, Dr. Lance Bush, Dr. Don Loeb, Troy from Friction Philosophy, Dr. Kane B, Ask Yourself YouTuber, and countless others. Why privilege the realist intuitions when many others don't have them, and when many others have entirely opposite intuitions? E.g., many people in the aforementioned list intuit that rightness, wrongness, goodness, badness, etc. couldn't be stance independent, and many others do too. Doesn't significant intuition divergence undercut the central realist appeal to intuition? No. Okay, moving on. I'm kidding. So my view here is that, well, I'm a Bayesian again. I'm going to keep referencing Bayesianism. And one of the entailments of Bayesianism is that if you have two agents with like really different priors, they could observe the same phenomenon and come to different conclusions rationally. Like they could update on the same piece of data in a rational way, but because they had different priors, they'll come to the exact opposite conclusions. And I'm fine with that. I think that is totally reasonable entailment of Bayesianism. But what that means is that, hey, if I think that, well, I think that our intuitions serve the function, at least most of the time, of giving us our priors. So that means that when I come to a, I don't know, I observe some horrendous suffering perpetrated on the innocent by the hands of somebody malicious, and say Dr. Kane B sees the same thing, and I think my intuitions are giving me the prior that, or they're instilling within me the prior probability, so that when I see that, it is rational for me to conclude this is stance independently wrong. And it could very well be that for Kane B, his intuitions, well, for whatever reason, are set up in such a way that it's rational for him to conclude that, no, there are no stance-independent facts about goodness and badness. I just really like, or really dislike this suffering. So I'm fine, like, just in principle, I don't think intuition divergence is a problem. Now, you can go on to, like, say, like, well, hey, maybe you can give, like, an argument on the if there's supposed to be like a God giving us these intuitions, it seems like we could disprove that because there are some people who are being given lousy intuitions, and we wouldn't expect a good God to do that. But like that's a whole other can of worms I'm not going to get into because the question didn't ask that. This is basically my epistemology, why I favor my own intuitions, because I'm treating them like Bayesian priors. I'm perfectly fine with like privileging my own priors, because that's what a Bayesian agent should do. If somebody else, like, for some reason just had the strong intuition, like, I don't know, maybe they got hit in the head and they just have the strong intuition that if birds exist, then the world is controlled by lizard people, and they see a bird, it would have been a problem for them that it wouldn't have been a rational process that gave them those intuitions. But from that point, acting rationally on those intuitions, they would come to believe that lizard people control the earth. And obviously that the belief is false, because, you shouldn't trust the prior, the process that got you there. But with theism, it's hard because, like, if I'm a theist, and so I believe I'm a moral realist and a theist, and I think that both of these beliefs interlock, because as a theist, I can give an account of why my moral realism actually is like truth tracking. So it kind of pulls apart from the analogy with getting hit on the head. And just forget the analogy with the bird. Seeing birds and thinking lizard people control the world. I'm getting too much into the weeds of the question, and I think I'm just being more confusing than I am clarifying. Takeaway is that as a Bayesian, I'm fine with people taking opposite conclusions from the same data, because our priors could be different, and I think intuitions give people priors. That's what seemings do. So I'm fine with different people having different intuitions, different seemings, seeing the same phenomena and walking away with different conclusions, and both of them being rational in doing so. Anyways, moving on. Godless Engineer says, do you believe God is omnibenevolent? Yes, I do. Okay, moving on. I'm kidding. I'll read the rest of the question. If so, how do you explain God's explicit commands to kill innocent, defenseless children in Numbers 31 verses 17 to 18, Joshua 6 verse 21, 1 Samuel 15 verses 2 to 3, and Deuteronomy 2 verses 33 to 35? Okay, so, the general stance I have here is like, my general take, my general answer to this is that when you read the Bible, it's going to first be confusing because so much of the time you have this exact same scenario. You have somebody commits a sin, or some group of people commits a sin, and then a larger group of people get punished for it. Like that's like that. You see that a lot throughout the Bible. Like say Korah's rebellion. Dude rebelled against Moses, and his entire family got killed. Or David sinned by taking a census, and the entire nation of Israel was punished for it, and so on and so forth. So you have a person or a group of people sin, and then a larger group gets punished. And then, so you start thinking about that, okay, how can I make sense of this? And here's a theory that would make sense of the text internally, like would make internal sense of the what's going on here. And I think the Israelites believed this. I think the Israelites had a conception of justice wherein not just people had moral status. Like you could think of like a rock. A rock can't be innocent or guilty. Oh, sorry. Bumped a plate. Anyways, sorry. Rocks can't be innocent or guilty. People can be. People have moral status, the ability to be innocent or guilty. I think the Israelite conception of justice, or the conception of justice that the Old Testament has in view, is a conception of justice wherein groups of individuals can have moral status. And if a group of people has the moral status of guilty, then that group of people is deserving of punishment. So that makes sense of the text internally. Like now you can understand what's going on, why Korah's family gets killed instead of just Korah. It's because Korah's family is seen as having moral status, and when Korah sins, it's not just him that was guilty. The group that he was part of as his family is guilty. Oh, that makes sense. Now I understand the internal logic of it. Okay, but that's just the internal logic of it. What is actually true here? Like, is God omnibenevolent? Well, so if this moral theory is true, well then yes, because like God's just acting in accordance with justice, right? If that's the way justice actually works, and a group of individuals can be collectively guilty, then when God makes a collective punishment, that's in line with justice. But if it's false, then what you could do is you could give like a theory of God was accommodating this false belief in the Israelites, in the narratives he was teaching the Israelites about him. So like, just a super simplistic example. God wants to tell the Israelites, hey, I'm on your side and I will protect you from other nations. Well, then he has to communicate that to the Israelites, he gives a narrative where he kills every Egyptian firstborn son. Because the Israelites, God knows, would have read that as not individual children dying, but the way they would have understood that is the group entity of Egypt suffering for its crimes against the Israelites. So God accommodated this moral framework to teach the Israelites important truths, while well, here's the interesting thing. You could further go with this route. You could say he was simultaneously trying to correct these faulty beliefs of the Israelites. Like in, I believe it's Ezekiel 18, like God's like trying to tell the Israelites, hey, if a kid or if a child commits some crime, you're not supposed to hold the father responsible, and vice versa. Like if you're innocent, then you're innocent, and if you're guilty, you're guilty. Guilt and innocence does not pass from father to son. You actually see in the New Testament, I can't remember where that is exactly, but Jesus is not accepted in a town, and I think it's the twins. The disciples say, "Hey, should we pray for fire to come onto the city?" And like Jesus rebukes them. Well, one interpretation of that, like the disciples were acting under like this belief that because there were individuals in the city that rejected Jesus, the entire city was guilty and should be burned. But like, obviously not every man, woman, and child went to see Jesus. So there's like a question here. Who actually was guilty? The Israelites, Jesus' disciples here obviously believed in this moral theory, but you could argue like, no, the Bible is actually trying to correct this and replace it with a more individualistic understanding of morality. Or, you know, you could just bite the bullet and say, hey, our intuitions about this are all wrong. This about like individualistic morality, that's just culturally inculcated in us to think in such an individualistic matter. Groups do actually have moral status, and, you know, just bite some bullets there, I guess. That's another way you could do it if you don't want to like reinterpret your understanding of inerrancy, because this might I think you can maintain inerrancy and take either view here. It just, you have to like have a very complex view of inerrancy if you want to say that God's like communicating through these narratives in a way that accommodates false moral beliefs. Anyways, now I'm starting to rabbit trail, so I'm going to go into the replies, because I hope that gives you like a general idea. You have two options. Either take this internal logic and say it's actually true, so that's why God's omnibenevolent, he's dealing with these people justly. Justice actually does require punishment of groups. Or you could like maintain your intuitions and say God was accommodating this false moral theory. Anyways, going to the replies, Godless Engineer says, also congrats on 5K. Thank you. You know, quick story, Godless Engineer was the first atheist to do a response video to me. Actually, he's the first person at all to do a response video to me. He did it on one of my arguments from Beauty, and like at the time he had like 100 times the subscribers as me, so like he gave me some visibility there. It's cool. Anyway, Logical Liberty says, I'll also add that I'd love if Apologetics Squared could address the flood. Even if the flood is local, it's about as morally abhorrent, if not more so, than commanding genocide. It's God himself directly causing babies, children, women, etc. to drown. Not only are many of the victims innocent, and not only does drowning seem cruel and disproportionate even as a punishment of the non-innocent sinners, but drowning is also indiscriminate and equally doled out, which smacks of patent injustice. So I think everything I've said so far about like this moral framework where groups of people have like moral status would explain this perfectly. In the framework, the internal logic of it is that, hey, humanity is humanity as a whole has moral status and is guilty here. So that's why humanity as a whole is punished indiscriminately. Anyways, I do have more to say about the flood, which I guess I could do a video on because, well, but it's not really like, you know, my forte, so don't know if I'll get into that. Anyways, okay, we have Shao Vertica and Godless Engineer talking about which are the best verses to use. And, oh, Matthew Fernley says, Godless Engineer just wanted to give a +1 for your putting in a respectful, if challenging contribution, and offering a friendly congrats to a, quote, rival channel. I enjoy seeing this kind of respect between opposing views. Yes, I do too. I think Godless Engineer saying congrats here and giving contributing with a question was very nice of him. Anyways, Litigious Society says, what denomination of church do you attend? You don't have to explain why. Is that personal? Is that a personal question? I don't know. I'll just go with yes. So I attend every church denomination in alphabetical order. So at the beginning of the year, I go through Anglican, then Baptist, then Catholic, and then by the end of the year, I'm trying to think of a denomination that starts with a Z, but all I can think of is Zoroastrianism, which is not a denomination, so I kind of just ruined my own joke. Okay, anyways, moving on. D asks, question subject. Ooh boy, this is a long one. Even if Bayesian final outcomes of infinitely many updates eventually produce the correct outcomes regardless of initial conditions, what are your comments on the following? 1. How can anyone feel that they actually made these calculations when certainty is very subjective and not easily converted to a number between 0 and 1. Please, people skeptical of this procedure feel that it's very subjective. I myself am undecided on this. This is a common objection that you may have addressed already. So, my response to this is that you actually don't need to convert your beliefs into a number between 0 and 1. I mean, you could try by seeing in different scenarios, would I gamble on this proposition being true? I mean, it's kind of hard to think of a scenario where you could gamble on God's existence, but if a gamble for $100, you either get nothing or $100. Nothing if God doesn't exist, $100 if God does exist. Would you pay $50 to enter that bet? Yes. Okay, well then you're at least 50% sure that God exists. You wouldn't pay $90? Okay, so you're less than 90% sure that God exists. So that's a way of converting a number between your credence to numbers between 0 and 1. But that's mostly an aside. I think more generally, Bayesian reasoning shouldn't be thought of as requiring actual numbers to your credences. It's more that you understand the relationship between your beliefs. So you understand that, hey, this theory predicts something very heavily that did come true. I'm going to give that a lot of credence. And it's going to be subjective, but it shows you the relation between these beliefs, which is very helpful, very useful. Anyways. Yeah, we don't need to figure out that theism's probability is raised by exactly 2.1% by the Kalam. We just need to know that, hey, the Kalam gives some evidence for the Kalam, for theism because of its ability to correctly predict the data. That's my answer. 2, given that there are really only finitely many measurements for updating, only so many things we can consider from the textual, historical, and modern history, and some people think the priors for Christianity are rather low, then how can we expect them to come to the correct conclusion? It seems that even if they evaluated it honestly, they would not get close to 1/2. Okay, so this depends on, I guess, how you argue for your priors. I don't know why the prior for Christianity would be so low that they're, even with all the evidence in the world, literally in our physical earth, you couldn't come to Christianity. I mean, if we think about all the ways the world could be, all the epistemic possibilities, we could think of for example, I'm just going to go to the argument from popularity that I mentioned earlier. We could think of a world where Islam is the most popular religion. We could think of a world where Zoroastrianism is the most popular world religion. We could think of a world where Judaism is the most popular world religion. So there's unimaginable different possibilities about different ways you could have divvied up the popularity of world religions, but we happen to get one in particular where Christianity is the most popular. And that's going to be intrinsically improbable because there are just so many competing hypotheses, competing epistemic possibilities here, that when you update on this particular possibility, that has the ability to actually overcome the low prior. I'm going to try and clarify what I mean by that. When a proposition has a low prior, it can be overcome if you observe some data that is very well predicted by your theory and itself has a very low prior. So Christianity, this might be best to get, illustrated with the resurrection. Say you assign a really low probability to Christianity, but you just yourself see the resurrection. Well, even though Christianity has a low probability for you, seeing a resurrection has an even lower has a comparably low prior probability. So when you observe it, that is enough weight to it because its probability was so low, but you're actually seeing it. That is enough weight to actually overcome the low prior probability in Christianity. And there are things the exact way history has played out. It has such a low prior probability that there's no reason a priori to think that it could not overcome 1/2 easily, or even get you into the 99.999 credence levels. Anyways, moving on. 3, not sure if you saw David Wood's recent video on Act 17 polemics. I recommend it, but he went over something said by Dawkins about not accepting any evidence for God root, and the aliens could make me think God exists, so I shouldn't believe regardless argument. Shermer made an argument like that in his debate with David, and I think it is something serious to think about as a psychological phenomenon. It seems to me that they may have deep down always felt this way and think that alien arguments touted as a truism Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic was accepted as proof, but now we all can see, as David explains in that video, that that proof is so strong that it proves too much because it is flawed. David actually explains why my guess is true from what Dawkins said. He is never really open to the evidence. So my third question is, what do you think about the movement of people who just make the prior probabilities for Christianity equal to 0? People like Dawkins are very influential and his confidence can be reassuring, but many people don't know he is unreasonable. I'm not interested in your personal life at the expense of your privacy online. Obvious point, not a question. 5,000 is not a square. 5,041 is the nearest square above. Yes, I've made this video so late prior that I'm like past 5,100 now. So totally past 5041. Anyways, the question about what about people making Christianity's probability, prior probability equal to 0? In standard Bayesianism, if any proposition has a probability equal to 0, it is impossible, even like after infinitely many measurements, to actually change that probability above 0. Like if for example, I assign a probability of 0 to the possibility of contradictions. Like the logical possibility of contradictions, I assign a probability of 0 to that. So then, when I update on information, like that never goes up. Like if I get some evidence that it's raining outside and some evidence that it's not raining outside, like there's no amount of like conflicting evidence like that will ever make me give up the law of non-contradiction. I'm just going to always maintain that no, whether it's raining or not, it's definitely not a contradiction. So like that's how probabilities of 0 work in Bayesianism. It makes you dogmatic and you can never overturn that probability. I guess like it's a free country if Dawkins wants to do that and like never become if he never wants to become a Christian and just always maintain dogmatically that Christianity is false no matter literally what evidence he gets, I guess he can do that, but it's just, I don't see that as reasonable. Like literally, if God like rolled back the sky and like came to Richard Dawkins and whatever, and like Richard Dawkins would not only have to, if he sets the probability of Christianity to 0, then not only would he have to say like that isn't the Christian God, which he might very well say, but he'd have to say that that's no evidence at all for the Christian God. So yeah, I think that's just unreasonable, unreasonably skeptical. Like I myself don't assign 0 probabilities to much of anything. Like I think most religions have a non-zero chance. I just think it's really close to 0. So in principle, I could have my mind changed to a different religion if I was given enough evidence for it. But like it'd have to be more evidence than I currently have for Christianity, which would be very difficult to perform. Anyways, moving on. I have to get through a lot of these. MKL says, woohoo! Oh, but right back at you, MKL. Noah Schult says, do you have a life or death testimony? I find that although many people will have a testimony about God, it can seem either like a coincidence or unconvincing, unless it is far more serious, with the only explanation being God. Some people have these kinds of testimonies, but I'm curious if you have one like that. No, I'm sorry, I do not have any amazing testimony. I have a very, very boring testimony, actually. So, yeah, no miracles. No, like, I was in a car crash, but then an angel, like, plucked me out of the air or something. Who was it? Daniel, I'm totally blanking on the name of his channel, but, the dude Daniel with the lion channel, he has a cool testimony where it's like, he was falling through a floor and he's going to land on his head, but then just everything around him froze. And like, I mean, I don't, if you want to say he's lying or something, fine, but like, he has a cool testimony if you want to see one. Shoot, is it just Daniel Apologetics? Is that his channel name? I'm totally blanking. Anyways. Miles Mill says, congrats on this milestone. Keep it up. My question, what are your thoughts on the Catholic Church and sacred tradition? I'm converting Catholic. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, so Catholicism is something I would love to study more. I haven't done a ton of studying into it, but from what I have seen, it kind of looks like the sort of doctrines that you would develop over time to answer like theological issues as they sprang up. It does not look like it's divinely revealed, or I should say divinely guided. It does not look like the Catholic Church is true. It doesn't look like sacred tradition is guided by God. Like, for example, the Catholic Church, it seems like they just really like Thomas Aquinas, so they adopted a lot of his teaching and put it into like Catholic dogma. Again, not very well studied on this. I'm trying to make that as clear up front as possible. But that's what it kind of looks like to me, even though like they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot, because even though that made sense to do at the time, like it turns out that, you know, Thomas Aquinas's theology had some problems with it. So stuff like that. Or again, this is just the way it seems to me. Purgatory looks like it was made to deal with some theological, or purgatory and limbo, things like that, seem to have come about to deal with theological issues at the time. So like if I look at this from a Bayesian framework, I have two hypotheses. The view that the Catholic Church is true and like sacred tradition is like guided by God. And then I have this other view where it's like a lot of their doctrines are man-made. It looks like the specific doctrines that Catholicism has ended up with seem to just really fit a lot better with that second hypothesis. So right now I am not a Catholic, but if there's evidence, like I mean, hey, if Catholicism is true, that'd be very important to know. So I'm open to it if there's like evidence that could overturn the counter arguments. But right now, I don't know. There seems to be more, like from my vantage point, there seems to be more against it than for it. Anyways, Jason Push says, what do you enjoy the most about being an apologist? So for me personally, I feel like God's given me abilities that like really like, I feel like being an apologist is like a calling that God has for me. So when I do apologetic stuff, I feel like I'm living out the calling God has for me. And yeah, that's what I would say is the what I enjoy most about being an apologist. Adonai says, Messi or Ronaldo? I don't really... It's Messi. Moving on. Let's see if Reason says this as a correct answer, and I may be forced to unsubscribe if the wrong answer is given. Well, if you think the wrong answer is Messi, then I don't want your subscription. Apologetics, my word, why did you spell your name in a complicated way? Apologetica Christinismulio per. Sorry, I totally butchered that. Majesty of Reason, Messi, of course. By the way, where can I contact? Oh, okay. I didn't even have to read the name. It wasn't relevant to asking me questions. Moving on. What's in a Name asks, what argument got you interested in apologetics? I mean, I'm not interesting here. It was the Kalam. The Kalam gets so, like, William Lane Craig, like, even if the Kalam, whether or not you think it works, it has been amazingly successful for apologetics just for getting people interested in this debate. I mean, my word, no other argument, like, I don't know of anything else that has ever gotten as many people interested in apologetics as William Lane Craig's Kalam. So, like, hats off to him, because, like, it brings up so many interesting questions that just make you want to delve deeper. Like, do I think the A theory of time is true? Or do I think the B theory of time is true? Oh yeah, it does seem that if anything caused the entire universe, it would have to be like timeless and immaterial and stuff. Oh yeah, what do I think about infinity? Maybe I should look into some mathematics so I could better understand what this Aleph Null stuff is, and these what Hilbert's Hotel, how that works. We're just really effective for getting you into all these sort of debates. Anyways, what arguments have you changed your mind on the most? I guess, okay, this might be a cheat answer, but there are some arguments where I think they get like absorbed into other arguments. For example, the fine-tuning argument and the argument from the applicability of mathematics, I think they don't provide any evidential weight on their own because their evidential power is subsumed or like a subset of the evidential weight of the psychophysical harmony and nomological arguments respectively. Anyways, moving on. Yeah, it's so arguments like that. Basically, I think that I start thinking out these arguments can stand on their own. Then I think, oh wait, no, they don't have any evidential weight at all. Their evidential weight is a subset of this argument I already thought had evidential weight. And so like, basically it's a thing in Bayesianism. You can't update on the same evidence twice. That's double counting or double dipping or whatever you want to call it. So like those arguments I've had to basically scrap because I think, oh, those would be double dipping if I update on them. Anyways, moving on. What do you think of skeptical atheism? Paul Draper, 2015. They claim that because there are a multitude of variants of atheism, this is a response to Swinburne calling all pseudotheisms too wildly impossible to take seriously, the probability space for atheism is much higher than we give it credit for. For example, cosmopsychism, aesthetic deism, nagal teleology, very but not all powerful, good, knowledgeable beings, simulation, all sorts of stuff we haven't thought of. So, I mean, I guess, like, if this is, like, a claim that theists generally don't consider how many alternatives there are to theism, I don't know, that might be true. I think about these sorts of alternatives a lot, so I guess, hey, that's not true in my case. But I don't think that Paul Draper was talking about me in particular in his 2015 paper. But if you want to say, like, hey, the probability space of atheism is actually just high, like full stop, not higher than what theists generally think, I think that's not correct. That's because of how I slice up probability, or how I think we should get prior probabilities. I think we get our prior probabilities from our intuitions. And so I don't think just listing out a large number of different views is going to necessarily entail that atheism has a very high prior probability, because, I mean, that's going to be a function of how intuitive you find these different views. And so on and so forth. If you include all sorts of stuff we haven't thought of, I mean, I guess, like, well, aren't there versions of theism we haven't thought of? Like, I don't know if just there being stuff we haven't thought of counts for atheism more than theism, because there are, like, lots of different ways of developing your theology that we haven't thought of, just as there are many ways of developing your naturalistic worldview. Like, and which are there more of? I don't know. Like, I mean, God's infinite. So can I say, like, because he's infinite, there are infinitely many ways of, like, dividing up or, like, devising theologies? I guess I should say, as a more broader point, I don't like counting arguments like this. Because, like, what if I said, like, hey, there are, like, tens of thousands of Christian denominations, and there's only, like, one tenet of atheism. If we give us equal slice of the probability pie to each denomination and atheism, well then, look, every denomination, there are, like, tens of thousands of denominations, so they're just going to swamp the probability of atheism. Woo! Sorry. Sound effects by Squared. So, yes, I'm not really convinced by this. Paul Draper, I know he has, like, this different way of divvying up prior probabilities than me, so that's probably where this is coming from. Anyways, Connor Bingham, thought that there's going to be Bringham, but no, it's Bingham, says, hopefully this doesn't fall in the category of too personal lol. How much time studying do you spend to make your content? Are you a student? Working? Why begin this YouTube project, say, spending more time dialoguing with non-believers in person? Essentially, I'm curious how you develop this the burden for this ministry of yours. So the time I spend studying, so a lot of my arguments are, like, original to me, like a lot of the stuff I come up with. So, when I, that's kind of what my channel is more for. Like, I try to spend more time on interesting, novel, original arguments for theism rather than, like, rehashing and re-explaining old arguments. So that kind of helps with the studying time, because, like, if I'm not going over an argument that has had thousands of articles written about it, I don't have to read thousands of articles. But I guess, like, in terms of how long does it take me to make a video, well, as a rough estimate, if you take okay, well, no, that's, I came up with like an estimate for how long it takes me to make my videos, and it's like every minute of my video, it probably took me about an hour to make that minute. So, but like that's when I like formulated that estimate and like timed how long it took me to do different parts of the video making process, I wasn't actually considering studying time in that. So I'm not really sure. I haven't really timed any of it. Maybe I should. Anyways, are you a student? Working? I am not a student. I tried to go to university, but I actually have all PhDs, so there's nothing I can go to university for. Working? Yes, I'm the president of everything. So if you have a complaint about like literally any institution ever, hit me up and I will try and get those rules changed. Sorry, that wasn't very funny. I'll try and come up with a better joke. Anyways, why begin this YouTube project over, say, spending more time dialoguing with non-believers in person? So I have a particular set of skills, which, I don't know, read that in a, what is it, Liam Neeson? I don't know actors' names. I have a very particular set of skills. Analytic, advanced philosophy of religion. Like that's what I'm good at. I enjoy it and I'm good at it. And there aren't many people on the street that would enjoy talking about that. But like the people who do, I like a chance to like represent Christ to them and stuff. So I try to like, you know, make my videos in a respectful and engaging way, and also in like an intellectually rigorous way, and dialogue with those non-believers. And the thing is, I could talk to more non-believers through my channel than I probably could in person. Like my videos have probably touched like way more people. Oh, they can touch way more people in a single day than I could if I like went out and had conversations with a bunch of people on the street. So I guess that's kind of my reasoning. Well, I won't say it's my reasoning. I don't justify it by like the time saved. I justify it by, I think this is what God's called me to do. But yeah, I guess that's one reason why to do this project on YouTube over talking with people in the streets about Paul Draper and Richard Swinburne. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Moving on. Matsumura asks, they ask, congratulations squared, what led you to start this channel? Thank you. So I really enjoyed watching YouTube apologists, and I don't remember how they first got into my feed. I guess I was watching like evangelism content, then I got like Christian apologetics content, and then I'm like, that stuff's awesome. I want to do that. So then I did. Okay, Grosty asks, congratulations squared. If you ask, sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. Grosty says, congratulations squared. For context, if you answer my question, pronounce my name Grosty, Frost, but a G plus an E sound, not Grosty. My question is this. If you were to give a short critique of arguments like the transcendental argument for presuppositional apologetics, what would that critique be? Thanks. Okay, so for presuppositional apologetics, they have a bunch of arguments, but like they are basically, they're all of the form, hey, your worldview includes something, and your worldview can only include that if it also includes God. Like your worldview includes that you know things. Well, you can only know things if God exists. Your worldview includes the truth of the laws of logic. Well, you can only believe in the truth of laws of logic if God exists. And okay, the question is like, okay, why do I have to believe that? Well, you might think that, or like a presuppositional apologist might say, well, hey, the laws of logic are spaceless, timeless, immaterial, and necessarily existing. And the only like thing that could serve that role as a spaceless, timeless, necessarily existing thing is like the thoughts of God as the laws of logic or something like that. And the problem with presuppositional arguments is that basically other things besides God can play that role for if we just go off of what the presuppositional apologists usually tell us. Like, why can't I just have an abstract object play the role of the universal laws of logic? I don't think that like presuppositional apologetics gives like good answers to why, or gives good answers to alternatives to God for explaining things like the laws of logic or the uniformity of nature. In its standard form, like when you're thinking of a presuppositional apologist, like and the arguments they give, that's my general critique of the way they argue. Now, I do think transcendental arguments, like in principle, can work. Like given my epistemology, like you could say, hey, theism predicts, I don't know, laws of logic are a weird one. Well, okay, well, we'll go with the existence of knowledge. Theism predicts the existence of knowledge. Naturalism doesn't predict the existence of knowledge. Then we update on the fact that we do know things, then our credence in theism goes up. Like that I'm totally fine with. But the way, like, yeah, presuppositional apologetics is usually framed, I think they don't do enough to handle, like, alternatives to theism. Because, I mean, the alternatives to theism, like abstract objects to like that impose regularity on the universe, are pretty esoteric. So like most people don't know about them, but like most people don't even know why they would need an abstract object to impose regularity on the universe. So if if you're not informed about like esoteric philosophical issues, presuppositional apologetics won't make sense. And if you are informed, then you'll be able to just give alternatives to God for all their arguments. Anyways, that's my kind of short, off the cuff critique. Slowcole 100 asks, I'm curious to know what your opinion is on certain philosophical ideas that I think coincide with proofs for theism, such as the essence and existence distinction. I feel like you'd have some really interesting thoughts. So essence and existence distinction, I haven't studied enough. I know the basic concept, but I will say more generally that I often like will just like find some random branch of philosophy, learn about it, and come up with an argument for theism. And I think that though there is a danger in that, because you might end up making some silly like elementary mistake, but like I think that there is also like the fact that theism touches on so many areas of philosophy. Most areas of philosophy can actually have an argument for theism built into them. So, or drawn out from them, I should rather say. So yes, I mean like mereology. I have an argument for theism from the existence of chairs, for example. I haven't really given it any public context, but I plan to at some point. The argument from the existence of chairs. I just like finding random branches of philosophy and making arguments for theism from them. Anyways, moving on. Grosty, okay, I'm intentionally mispronouncing your name, and I feel bad about that. I'm sorry. Grosty says, another question that I'm somewhat more curious to hear a response to. One of my criticisms of those who deny the doctrine of Christ's real presence in the Eucharist and the necessity of baptism for salvation is that the early church immediately followed and was ordained by the apostles universally believed these doctrines, a fact that, as far as I can tell, is not disputed by scholars. And that the only people who denied them usually did so because of the denial of some other core Christian doctrine, like Christ's real physical human body. On your view, how did the early church come to hold doctrines like these within a generation of the apostles? Would it indicate the apostles did not properly share the gospel? Wouldn't a better explanation of the data be that the apostles actually believed these doctrines contra certain Protestant views? Thanks. This is not a question I have looked into at all. I've not studied these issues at all. So this, again, off the cuff. But what comes to mind for me is that, like, in 1 Corinthians 15, we have, like, Paul needing to correct people who didn't think there would be a general resurrection. So, like, I don't know. It seems to me like, plausibly, like, Christian, like all us Christians, Protestant, Catholics, or whatever, we're all committed to, like, very early on, people can get, like, some pretty serious stuff wrong, and the apostles would have had to correct it. So if the early church got some stuff wrong, well, that doesn't tear apart my worldview. I guess there are more general it could get back to the argument from popularity. I think you could apply the argument from popularity to specific theologies, but I don't think that these particular beliefs actually play as much of a theological significance as they might seem to on first brush, whatever the phrase is. So I'm now putting arguments into Grosti's mouth about like, hey, what if we like repurpose your argument from popularity for these early church doctrines, which is not what Grosti was saying. So I should not try to put words into Grosti's mouth. Basically, what I would say is that Protestant or Catholic, we're committed to like 1 Corinthians 15. It is possible for the early church to get stuff wrong when they're important issues. And I think the apostles did correct them as much as possible. But do I think this undercuts the apostles reliably laid out the gospel? No, I don't, any more than I think that like the First Corinthians the Corinthians misunderstanding the general resurrection undercuts their ability to communicate the gospel. Anyways, hope that was clear. I probably I have a feeling I misspoke somewhere, and I'm going to get some angry comments. Anyways, moving on. Crab King says, in your opinion, what piece of data lends the most amount of evidence for atheism/naturalism? Oh, that would be divine hiddenness. So, like, basically, for, like, arguments from suffering, it's like, hey, theism doesn't predict this mental state. And I'd say, fine, but I don't think naturalism does a good job of predicting the mental state of suffering either. Because, like, many reasons, one of which being psychophysical harmony. Okay, but what about the argument from hiddenness? That's the lack of a mental state. So that's an argument where naturalism doesn't have to predict it. It just has to not predict, divine hiddenness is when it's just not widespread that everybody has the mental state of being in a relationship with God. And naturalism can account for that far better, or I think it predicts it more strongly than theism does. So I think divine hiddenness is actually the piece of data that lends the most amount of evidence for atheism/naturalism. Which actually means I think it has, because it's like the strongest like piece of data, like it has the most effect on my overall worldview. It's one of that actually means that since I think Christianity handles it the best, it actually really swings like my credence in religions really powerfully towards Christianity as a side effect. Anyways, are there any non-Bayesian style arguments for naturalism which keep you up at night or at least make you think a bit? Okay, so if there's any like argument where I like find the rational structure in it, I think like I could usually rephrase it in Bayesian terminology, unless it's like a deductive logical proof, and then I just like input my credences in the premises, and then it's still technically Bayesian. So like I don't know any like how to interpret a non-Bayesian argument besides like looking at some horrendous evil and just getting like this visceral feeling that there cannot be a god, and like those can be pretty powerful, and like so I think that's worth taking seriously. Like when you look at something and you just get this visceral feeling like I cannot believe in a god, because like I think that it's actually rational to act on those visceral feelings. I think that like there are considerations that outweigh it. Like again, I think intuitions serve as prior probabilities, and I think this gets complicated, but I think you could also update on new intuitions as well. So if you like read about the Holocaust and you get like this intuition that there can't be a god, that should actually decrease your credence in theism. But I think that other things raise your credence in theism past that, or can overcome that hit to your credence. So maybe that's a good answer. Yeah, like for example, like if I think about the entirety of the universe's life being like a fraction of eternity, well then I get like the exact opposite intuition that hey, the suffering is I get like this visceral feeling like hey, suffering does not count against the existence of God at all. So like what's goosey gander super saucy, as William Lane Craig likes to say, Um, anyways, that's my ramblings on non-Bayesian arguments. Anyways, Joseph Thrasher says, what do you think of the purpose of philosophy in relation to the spiritual life? Do you read much about Christian mysticism? Okay, the purpose of philosophy in relation to spiritual life. So philosophy can, I think generally philosophy can be very dangerous to someone's spiritual life because it causes one to like analyticize away God, like as like a real, or how do I put this, as something that's like emotionally real to you, and you just think turn into your religion into something purely intellectual. Philosophy is very dangerous for that, and I'm not any sort of I'm not any sort of visionary for being able to see it. It's something that like anybody who gets into apologetics in any sort of depth starts to see like, oh, I got to be careful here that I don't over intellectualize this and like actually hurt my spiritual life. But I think what like apologetics and philosophy of religion, what they do is they help you think about God constantly, which is very like that aspect of them is very spiritually healthy, very helpful. Just like all throughout the day, I'm thinking about apologetics, and I'm subsequently thinking about God, and then like, hey, that's a good opportunity to remind me to pray, stuff like that. Anyways, I've not read much Christian mysticism, no. Can philosophy be a prayer in the way that Brother Lawrence said that washing the dishes for him was a prayer? I'm not familiar with that, but if washing the dishes can be a prayer, then I'm pretty sure philosophy can. Math Adam ADHD says, will hell be empty or full at the end of time? Also, what's your favorite math equation? So, I grew up just being EC tier. I've always just held eternal conscious torment because I wasn't really exposed to any of the other views. But like, you know, my credence has been shifting towards universalism as time goes on. So I don't know if it will just continue until I'm just a full-on universalist. But like, if things go unchanged, that's probably where I'll end up, or I'll find like my credence in universalism plateaus because they just run out of any arguments to convince me. But again, that's something else I need to study. Throughout this video, I say a lot. Hey, I need to study this. I need to study that. There's a lot of things to study, and I guess Christian theology. It's a pretty big domain. Anyways, what's my favorite math equation? Okay, so when I was younger, I actually made this equation that would like write out itself. So if you graphed it, I did something fancy where like I made an equation that would write out the binary digits of a number, and so I could in a fancy grid layout. So then I could use that to actually like spell out the equation, and then I encoded in the digits of its own digits, but like transposed, so it would write out itself. I gotta find it, but basically, yeah, it's an equation that I made that writes itself. Anyways, Johannes Kepler says, hi, I don't know if it would be too much trouble if you could recommend books to delve into the topics you cover on your channel. Congratulations on the 5,000 subscribers. Greetings from Argentina. So, the topics, if you just mean like non-traditional arguments for theism, easy recommendation, 24 or so arguments for God. Boom. It's a collection of some cutting edge, well, I don't know if it's still considered cutting edge, but some newer-ish novel, non-traditional arguments for God. So yeah, there you go. We're all in the truth-seeking gang says, woot, congrats. Well, woot right back at you. What are your plans for this channel going forwards? So I want to make a very, very in-depth video on psychophysical harmony that's as simple as possible. Like, explain it like I'm 5, psychophysical harmony. Because there's a lot of complexity to unpack, I want it to be simple, but to unpack everything, it will have to be long. But after that, after I get off of my psychophysical harmony high, I'm going to get back onto my cumulative case series for Christianity, which I'm right now very like philosophically oriented, but nearing the end of that, I'm going to like shift gears and get more into historical stuff, which will that will require a shift in my studies as well. Because I want to give all of y'all the best content I can. So I'm not sure how much that'll change the tone of the channel when I start getting into historical stuff. But after that, I'm pretty open. Like after I finish my cumulative case series, I will be very happy, but I'm not going to be done. I'm going to keep making videos. Maybe I'll get more into debates, and start interacting with other people in this philosophy of religion sphere more. I don't know. I don't have tons of plans after the my SCC series is done. B, what is your stance on free will, and how might you go about defending said stance? I'm a libertarian, and long story short, I'd explain why I think intuition is valid for giving you prior probabilities, and libertarian free will is super intuitive. C, what other philosophy of religion YouTubers might you recommend to us? So one that always comes to mind, a couple come to mind. So you got Joe Schmidt from Majesty of Reason, Capturing Christianity. He's just amazing. Has all these scholars on. The Analytic Christian. I really like his stuff. He does stuff that Cameron Bertuzzi does as well. But I don't know. It's just what's the difference between the Analytic Christian and Cameron Bertuzzi? I don't know. The Analytic Christian does not have the hair of Cameron Bertuzzi. I could say that, and but he also has scholars on and interviews them on their work, and so I really enjoy his stuff as well. Who else? Exploring Reality, Than. Y'all need to support Than right now, okay? Go subscribe to Than. He could really use the support right now. He's going through some stuff. Anyways, what else? I think that's enough for now. I've given you a couple to check out. Majesty of Reason, Capturing Christianity, The Analytic Christian, who's underrated, by the way. Analytic Christian, I think, is underrated. And Exploring Reality, Than, also underrated. Oh, also Christian Idealism and Invoking Theism. Those are some other channels to check out as well. Anyways, I think that's enough. D, do you think actual contradictions are possible? Well, I don't think so. The way I see it is that you have the broadest kind of possibility is logical possibility, then more narrow is metaphysical. Oh, sorry. I guess epistemic possibility is the broadest kind. Then narrower is logical possibility. Then narrow still is metaphysical possibility. I think contradictions just by their nature, just definitionally can't be logically possible. Logically possible means it doesn't have a contradiction in it. And then metaphysical possibility is narrower than logical possibility. So if there are no contradictions in the broader space of all logically possible worlds, then in the narrow space of metaphysically possible worlds, there are no contradictions. Epistemically speaking, I go back and forth. Because you read some Graham Priest and I'm not convinced at all that contradictions are even remotely possible. But I see that there are reasonable people who disagree on this. And so then I'm oh, maybe it is epistemically possible. But then I try to imagine a square circle and I go back to no, contradictions are not epistemically possible. So I'm agnostic. I'm agnostic on the epistemic possibility of contradictions, but I'm very hardcore on saying no, they are not logically or metaphysically possible. E, is there a way to contact you if one of us wants to have a dialogue with you? Yes, you could go to my About page and email me. I have my email there. I can also tell you it right now. It's apologeticsquared@gmail.com. And finally, that's all. I highly appreciate the time and effort you take making these videos, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much. We're all in the truth-seeking gang. Maybe I should have referred to as an acronym. That's long. Wait. No, I'm not referring to you with an acronym. Thank you very much. Dave the Credible says, were you to convert to a religion other than Christianity, what would it be? So, I like the popularity argument. So what's the second most popular argument religion after Christianity? Well, that would be Islam. But even though they dominate, right after Christianity in terms of popularity, the arguments against Islam I find to be very persuasive. So I would not become a Muslim. Even if, Islam has like this powerful consideration of their popularity in their favor. Like they have other things that just kind of completely override that for me. So I don't know. I honestly don't know what I would be. Maybe I would just be like some sort of like wishy-washy pluralist. There you go. That's what I could be. I could be like, all religions are true in their own way. And then you can kind of abuse the argument from popularity to say, yeah, if every religion's true in its own way, then like all of the, then that's the most popular religion because everyone has some aspect of the truth or something. Anyways, yeah. I don't know, maybe just some pluralist. What's your favorite theodicy? I like the Heavenly Rebellion theodicy. I think it's in a video called My Favorite Theodicy. Or I write that on the thumbnail. But like it's my favorite. It doesn't give you like the ability to predict evil very strongly, but like it gives you the framework of being able to explain literally any evil, which I don't know, that's pretty cool. What's the best and worst argument for God, in your opinion, against God? Okay, so that's 4 questions. What's the best argument for God? What's the worst argument for God? What's the best argument against God? And worst argument against God? Okay, I already gave what's the worst argument for God. What's the best argument for God? It's either psychophysical harmony or the nomological argument. So I think the nomological argument can play on a lot of the same stuff that makes psychophysical harmony so special. But like psychophysical harmony can be diffused by taking some crazy views in the philosophy of mind. But like they're crazy, so that doesn't matter. Like if you think that like consciousness isn't like a concept that you could even like coherently understand, well then that diffuses psychophysical harmony. I find that implausible though, so it's like that. Like I find that as implausible as like something you can get. If somebody says like if they responded to like if somebody like a theist responding to the problem of evil by saying like, I don't know what suffering is. What is the suffering that you speak? I don't understand the concept of suffering. Like I can't even understand what this argument is that you're like. That's what the arguments from the responses to psychophysical harmony generally sound like to me. Like, but like nomological arguments, they don't have anything like that. So maybe nomological arguments, maybe they'll edge out against psychophysical harmony. But right now, I don't know, they're pretty neck and neck. Now arguments against God. What's the best argument against God? I think divine hiddenness. Worst argument against God, probably like arguments that try to show some contradiction in the divine properties, like the paradox of the stone or paradoxes of omniscience. I get very emotional about omniscience paradoxes, except Josh Rasmussen. Josh Rasmussen, he's cool. His omniscience paradox is very reasonable and almost like inescapable for like his core conclusion. But like other omniscience paradoxes, like, oh, there's no set of propositions God knows. I get very annoyed about those arguments because Zermelo-Frankel set theory sets wasn't made to categorize God's knowledge. Why are you acting like this is some sort of problem? I have to stop talking about those now because I'm going to get worked up if I keep talking about omniscience paradoxes based off of sets. Sorry. Anyways, keep going. I'm going to keep going. Underscore. Wait, how many underscores is that? 1, 2. Okay. Underscore says, what are your thoughts on falsifiable? Show something to be right or wrong, definitive truthhood, such relates to something consistently in our local, visible, noticeable environment, versus verifiable. Show something is more likely to be true compared to something else. Likelihood relates to something stuck outside of what we can observe, such as the past or future or far away physical places. Evidence. Lots of parentheticals there. Okay, so I don't know, as a Bayesian, I don't really think in terms of true, false, definitive truthhood, definitive falsehood, that sort of thing. I think of things as a continuum of probability where it goes up or down. And so, yeah, I guess in terms of evidence, I would be more inclined to think in terms of verifiable evidence rather than falsifiable evidence, given the kind of loose definitions you've given here. Shu or Sha Vertica says, when is your argument for Christianity series going to mention and argue for Christianity? So once I establish theism, like, then I'm going to start arguing for Christianity. Because, like, basically, I guess the gist of it is that I need to, like, convince you that there's somebody who can and would raise Jesus from the dead before I can show you that Jesus was raised from the dead, right? If you don't believe in God, I haven't like given you any arguments for the existence of God, then like it's going to be very hard, nigh impossible, to actually get you to believe Christianity. So I think that like arguing for the existence of God is very important, and so I want to like establish as strong of a case as I can for theism before I get to Jesus and Christianity in particular. Moving on, Greg says, congrats on 5K! Thank you, Greg. How would you define religion? Every definition I've seen is either too broad, every idea could ostensibly be religious, or too specific and exclusionary. Non-theistic forms of Hinduism would stop counting as religion, which seems silly. I've gotten more interested in this question as I've started researching Title 7. Like, Roman numerals are hard. Title 7, Protections for Religion. I personally find the Title 7 definition of religion to be a bad case of circular reasoning. Curious to hear how you define it. So, I think that defining social concepts like religion, defining instrument is hard because you like we saw at the very beginning of this video. If you define instrument in like the way that by saying it's something that can produce music, well, then you get mayonnaise as an instrument. Words are hard to define. Religion is hard to define. If you give a very precise definition, there are going to be edge cases which are always going to annoy somebody. So, I guess Hinduism, like non-theistic forms of Hinduism, those might be seen as an edge case because they're a particularly odd religion. So, because like, most religions have a god in them, god or gods. So I don't know if you'll be able to get around having edge cases where you give like a particular legal definition of religion that avoids weirdness with edge cases. So I don't know. I'm no legal scholar, legal philosopher, but like maybe that's like a scenario where like you leave it in the judge's hands to decide whether or not this particular protection applies to protections for religions. I guess you would want what I would be satisfied with is something that even if it doesn't do well on the edge cases, the definition gets like includes most religions, and then just as an addendum says, by the way, there are edge cases. So something like the reverential or worshipful attitude towards God or gods, or similar or more general spiritual practices. And it's like, oh, there's a lot being left there and more spiritual practices. And it's like, yeah, I'm not really sure. I can't give you a definition that will deal with absolutely all edge cases. So that I just add that on to deal with edge cases. But I'm not a legal scholar, and this is me just giving an off-the-cuff answer. So I'm not sure, like, I don't know if that's any good or not. Again, I give so many disclaimers because I don't want to lead anyone astray by like saying, "Oh yeah, I've studied this." Like when it comes to something I've studied, I'll give you a really like an answer that I'm really confident about and I love. But like so many things, it's like here's just Here's my off-the-cuff thoughts. Anyways, Darcy1 says, if you haven't made one already, would you make a video on the hiddenness of God argument as J.L. Schellenberg presents it? Yes, I want to make it in my cumulative case series video, or one of the videos in my cumulative case series. Also, most theists, to my knowledge, interpret the Bible in some cases in a non-literal way, for example, to avoid some tension between scientific findings and the literal meaning of some texts, like the universe being created in 14 billion years versus 6 days. I worry that this approach seems kind of ad hoc, and it often opens the possibility to interpret the text in whatever way we find suitable, so I'd like to know what you think about this. Thank you. Okay, so the particular example here of, like, how long did it take to create the universe? So we have like early church fathers who did not interpret it as a literal 6 days, right? Like they didn't have like any scientific reason to think to believe in any particular date, so they just they went with the universe being created in like an instant, because they didn't think that the 6 days was literal. But like if it's you have like early church fathers interpreting these texts non-literally, I don't know how ad hoc you could say it is. But more generally, if you believe that like you have two views of the Bible, where it's literal and that has this baggage of a particular like view of how the universe came about, and then you have a non-literal reading, which is more open with or more open about the way the universe actually unfolded. So like say Genesis is just giving you some a functional account of creation, or it's metaphorical or something. Then when you get some data that disconfirms the literal interpretation reading, I think it's fun. Like maybe your overall like Christian worldview will dip in probability, but it would be completely rational for you to conclude from that, like, oh, hey, I'll just go with this non-literal reading. Like that seems like a valid probabilistic way to think about the scenario, like the question at hand. But like on top of that, I think that, you know, you could give some there are arguments out there that like we just from within the text itself that a literal meaning of the creation narrative are it's not what the authors intended. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, but like, yeah, the possibility to interpret the text in whatever way we find suitable, that I think that's not like, I mean, of course that can happen. Like, there are probably many people who actually do that, but like, the cases of like theistic evolutionists and old Earth creationists, I think that conclusion can be brought to with careful reasoning. And if you are trying to apply careful reasoning to the text, then that does not open up the floodgates to just a bunch of silly interpretations to avoid whatever problems you happen to be concerned about. Anyways, hopefully I made everybody angry with my answer to that one. Moving on, Naturalin says, you are smarter than I am in these type things, so I don't want to ask except how old you and what made you start this journey. I am 971 years old. I have to double check of whether that means I beat up Methuselah yet. And what made me start this journey? Funnily enough, the book that got this all started is I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Frank Turek. Gotta emphasize it right. To put it some way, Frank Turek's book is not particularly advanced, but it started me on the journey of getting into apologetics. Rojas Ramos Aleph says, do you like JRPGs? Okay, I'm going to pause this 1 second. So JRPGs refers to, if the first result on Google is not lying to me, Japanese role-playing games. I don't play anything like that. So moving on, Nock says, what is your favorite type of cheese? This is the easiest question yet. Pepperjack. Oscar says, great stuff. Happy your channel is growing. My question is, what are your thoughts on the argument that Jesus was a failed apocalyptic prophet? Would love a squared angle on this one. Pun totally intended. Yes, squared angle. 90 degrees. Boom. So when this question was actually submitted, the Analytic Christian and Inspiring Philosophy both actually within a day or so released videos on this question. But basically, the view that I find the most plausible is the view that prophecies were not purely predictive; they could also be conditional. So the example that you might think of for prophecies is like Jesus saying, "Hey Peter, you'll deny me 3 times before the rooster crows." So that's like Jesus telling the future before it's going to happen. But there are other prophecies that don't work that way at all. Like Jonah's prophecy to the Ninevites that, hey, God's going to destroy the city. The Ninevites repented and God just didn't destroy the city. Like, God didn't say, unless you repent, I'll destroy the city. He just said, I'll destroy the city. But he didn't end up doing that when the Ninevites repented. So what that shows is that the prophecies in the Bible can sometimes just be like it could be implied that God's not actually predicting the future here. He's saying an action that might happen contingent on the response of the audience who is hearing the prophecy. And I think Isaiah 6 is a text that's cited as like going through this explicitly, but you find this all throughout the Bible. Arguably the predictive prophecies are actually far less common than the prophecies that are just conditional in nature. Like God saying, hey, I'm going to bless this nation. But then once they hear that prophecy, they get complacent. So God doesn't decide to bless them. Or God says, I'm going to judge this nation, but the nation repents, so God does not judge it. Like, that's actually fairly common stuff. So it's just understood that prophecies might be conditional on the audience. And so then we have to, when we go to Jesus's prophecy, we have to remember there are two, Jesus's prophecies that he would, return within a generation and whatnot. We have to, ask, which of these kinds of prophecies is it? Is it a conditional or a predictive? If it's a predictive prophecy, then Jesus is a failed apocalyptic prophet because blah, 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 blah. He did not return within a generation. It's been 2,000 years, so on and so forth. But if the prophecy is conditional in nature, well, then it's totally plausible that the condition was just not fulfilled. The audience responded in such a way that Jesus did not actually return. It might be, for example, that early Christians prayed that the Jesus's return would be delayed so that more might be saved. And some texts that really go into this, or some texts that really support this. One would be Jesus says, pray that that day is not on a Sabbath. Okay, how do you do that if the day is set in the stone and it's in the future and Jesus is predicting that's going to happen? If it's something that's more contingent on the audience's response, like the prophecy of Jonah, then it makes perfect sense why Jesus would want his followers to pray that it would not land on a particular day. And then we have something in 2 Peter, I don't have the reference pulled up with at this moment, but where Peter basically tells his audience that, hey, you have to live a certain way if you want to hasten the coming of the second coming of Jesus. I'm paraphrasing. So a lot of data points to this being a conditional prophecy that, but the conditions that were implicit in Jesus's prophecy were simply not met. Just like how Jonah's implicit condition of not repenting was not met, so the Ninevites were not destroyed. Anyways, moving on. Logosoul says, so I made a poem about Gyges, or Gyges, or Gyges. Gyges? I don't know how to pronounce that. It shows the problem of objectivity in punitive morality. Would you share this poem? I don't know who Gyges is, and I also don't share poetry on my channel very much, and I don't know you, so probably not. I don't mean that in a rude way. I just don't know who you are. Sorry. Sathvik S says, nice. You still in college? Yes, but I'm not attending them. I'm actually just the headmaster of all colleges in virtue of my being the president of everything. So if you're at any college anywhere, just show up to the headmaster's office and say hi to me, because that's where I'll be. Anyways, John says, congrats on 5K. Heart emoji. Assuming you're a realist about any of them, what do you take the relationship between abstracta and God to be? Conceptualism, Platonism, etc. I'm not a realist, but if I was, I'd be a conceptualist because of Josh Rasmussen's thoughts about propositions and Christopher Mendel's argument from set theory, all that fun stuff. Anyways, also, who's your favorite Bible character after God? Okay, it's gotta be the dude who Jesus healed his he spat on the ground, made some mud, put it on the guy's face. Guy went washed in the pool, then he could see, and he was brought before the the Pharisees for questioning. Like, Jesus found the most sarcastic guy to heal. Like, this dude, he was mad. He had some responses. It's like, why are you asking me to repeat this miracle? Oh, do you want to be his disciple? Like, this guy, he was awesome. Anyways, he was like brought before the authorities of his day, and he just like so not caring. He's just like, I can see now. I don't know what y'all are. Yeah, sorry. I'm not doing justice to it. I thought one thing I wanted to do for like an April Fool's video or something is just like a comedy skit about this dude, because like he is, I love him. Anyways, going on. Dominic S. says, congrats. Do you think the multiverse response to the fine-tuning argument commits the inverse gambler's fallacy, as e.g. hacking claims it does? So I haven't read the arguments that it commits the inverse gambler's fallacy, but I actually tend to think that no, the multiverse does not commit any sort of like probabilistic fallacy. In the probability space where the multiverse is like exists in that subsection of the probability space, we would expect that to have the observations of a fine-tuned universe. So I think it's valid probabilistic reasoning in that respect. Finfi asks, question A, what is your concept of evolution? AKA, describe your own understanding of what naturalistic scientists call evolution. Okay, so I guess without Googling, here's how I define evolution. I think that has like three components. Like, you have reproduction of whatever organisms we're talking about, variation when the reproduction occurs, and then environmental like selection effects to pressure certain certain variations. And I guess if we're talking about like naturalistic evolution, like, or like what is usually debated on the internet, it would probably also include something about common ancestry, that the process of evolution, as including those three components, started on like one thing and produced all life. B, what do you think actually happened, and how could we test your hypothesis? So I lean towards theistic evolutionism just because, well, I haven't, again, I want to study it more in depth, but like I haven't looked into all the DNA and radiometric dating and all that stuff. But like I tend to lean towards theistic evolution, whatever, because, you know, the people who are young Earth creationists tend to have an epistemology that's less similar to mine than the theistic evolutionists. Like, I don't know, you listen to Inspiring Philosophy and Ken Ham, just two big names in the Christian origins debate. You get them to explain their epistemologies. I'll probably end up looking somewhat quite a bit more like Inspiring Philosophy's epistemology. So that is where I tend to lean. But it's interesting because that's like my second order evidence. So my second order evidence would be like, hey, the people with my epistemology tend to come to this conclusion. The first order evidence would actually be looking at spending the time to go through the like the fossil record, the DNA evidence myself, and coming to that conclusion. So anyways, how could we test your hypothesis? Well, Bayesianism. I hope that answers your question. Because I'm appealing. Well, yeah, I think that Bayesian reasoning is used in science a lot, and so when we look at the origins debate, I mean, we would just use Bayesian reasoning. We'd try and figure out what different hypotheses about the origins debate predict, and then we just see, oh, which of these hypotheses is verified origins or verified predictions. Finvi also says, I always wondered about this because evolution clearly happened, but I can't see how anyone could fit this into a worldview with a god with all the omnis. There are countless better ways to achieve the same result as evolution without the endless meat grinder that is natural selection. The only reason we humans use evolutionary principles is in a situation where we want good solutions for problems where we lack the knowledge to solve them. God should not have the same limitation. So, here's a response that I thought of. Like, I've thought about this question before, because there's like an argument like, hey, God has all these ways to create life, but on naturalism, there's only one way for life to be produced. So, therefore, like, when we update on the fact that there's this evolutionary process, we therefore conclude, like our credence in naturalism goes up. Well, one response to this, like one way of like giving an explanation for like why God might favor an evolutionary process is like, well, we start with like a theodicy that John Buck developed. Writer John Buck. I have no idea if he's like even active in anything anymore. I deleted my Twitter, so and that's where I interacted him with the most. So I don't know. I hope he's doing well still. But anyways, he's this dude came up with the theodicy, and it's like, hey, it seems that if God can bring about a good, I mean that's okay. But if God can bring about a good through an agent, that multiplies the good, because there's the good of God bringing about a good, and the good of that other agent bringing about the good. So like, for example, making a painting. If God makes a painting, that's good. But if God brings about a person making the painting, there's the good of God making the painting indirectly, and the good of the person directly making the painting. So the idea is that we reason about like this idea that creating that God working through agents multiplies goodness. So then we would predict that God we would then predict that God would work through agents as much as possible. Okay, how does that help? Well, okay, if God wanted to work through an agent to bring about life, then maybe because that agent would be finite, their way they would bring about life looks would look more like an evolutionary process. Okay, I'm gonna like spell out one way of maybe doing that fits decently well with Christian theology, maybe. So some Christians are idealists, and they think that like the universe is made of consciousness, because then you don't have substance dualism. You simplify your ontology, you have substance monism. There's just consciousness. God is conscious, and he is a mind. We're minds. There's just minds. But problem with idealism is that God is separate from the universe. That's what the Bible seems to teach us. God is not the universe. He's something distinct from it. Okay, but like if we're simplifying our ontology, God's distinct from the universe, and everything is minds, then the universe is a distinct mind. I'm not sure how many people. Again, I'm just sharing my thoughts on this that I had one afternoon. So we have like this independent reasoning that maybe this universe is like a non-God mind, and then we have this reasoning that God might try to bring about the good things through other agents. Hey, maybe God would try to bring about the good of the creation of life through the universe, through the universe, because it counts as an agent in some sense, and so then we would expect an evolutionary process. Now, is that plausible? But is it interesting? Yes, and that's my criteria for whether or not I'll share an idea. Anyways, moving on. Jack Berry says, what are some of the best resources you have found for exploring philosophy of religion outside an academic setting, besides your channel, of course? Okay, so for me personally, if you want to, okay, first off, again, if you want to explore philosophy of religion, I'll say this 100 times, it'll involve like studying just philosophy more broadly, because all kinds of philosophy interact with philosophy of religion, metaphysics, ethics, epistemology, and so on. So, but like, where do you want to learn like general philosophy? How do you learn like general philosophy? That's hard. Well, there are some YouTube channels that just go through different philosophical context or concepts, like Carneades.org and Kane B. Those channels just go through a bunch of different philosophical concepts and topics and branches of philosophy, and just the modern debates on it, and that indirectly will give you a lot of foundation for understanding philosophy of religion. Now, the particular views of Kane B and Carneades.org, like, I'm totally not on board with like where they land. Like, Carneades.org. That dude's like a Pyrrhonian skeptic, and Kane B, he's like an anti-everything, anti-realist about everything. I didn't mean to say anti-everything. He's an anti-realist about everything. I'm being tongue-in-cheek when I say that, but like, yeah. Those are some channels that are good for learning philosophy, although I don't agree with the philosophies of the owners of those, or like the people who run those channels. Nick Esponja asks, 1, what's your view on consciousness? I assume some form of dualism, but do you think mental states are identical to soul states, or what is them, or is what makes them mental states their function? So I tend to think that, like, I try to, in my ontology, have substances and properties. So the idea is I want properties to like be able to say like, hey, that apple is red, but I need like substances to attach the property of red to. So I have a substance. Maybe you think that like apples don't exist, fundamental particles exist, and they are arranged apple-wise. Okay, so then fundamental particles would have like properties of like charges and locations and whatnot. So I like to, in my ontology, just have substances and properties. Okay, I don't know if that made sense, but just bear with me. So then I have like a person like myself, and I experience things, and so I have to like think, okay, I'm categorizing everything into substances and properties. What am I? Well, I'm a thing with properties, so I'm a substance. And thoughts, pain, like, and mental states like pain, there are things that like I possess in some sense. Okay, I'm gonna make those properties. Now all of this I'm very very loose about. Like, I just hold this because I think that it gives me some categories to. It's a good working model. This understanding of consciousness. So like my conscious experience of reality is just a bunch of properties that I have, a bunch of mental properties. Yeah, so that's I hope. I don't know if that was elucidating, but anybody giving their explanation of their preferred version of consciousness, that's rarely elucidating. So I'll let you decide how well I did. 2, assuming that your view of hell is ECT, would you be happy in heaven if one of your loved ones ends up in hell? Heck, thank you for not saying hell there, because that would have been an inappropriate use of the word hell. Would you be happy knowing that there are people in hell at all who are never going to get out of there? So this is a very I think it's a very good point, and it's worth discussing. Like, you shouldn't brush off this point. You should seriously consider it. And I think it's one of the things that moves me towards universalism. But there is kind of a weird point about this, that like there are people right now on Earth who are just miserable. They are living like terrible lives. Like, just statistically, there are like billions of people, at least a handful of them have to be going through agonizing torture right now. But like, and furthermore, that's true at any moment. But like, you could have a happy day and that's fine, right? Is that like a flaw? Is it like a flaw that we have happy days and like forget, or just have happy days despite knowing that there are people going through agonizing torture right now, or going through agonizing torture today? Or why limit to humans? If we just consider like all conscious creatures, there's definitely like some creature out there going through intense agonizing suffering right now. So should we just never be happy? Is it like a lack on our part? Because like the idea is like we'll be perfectly empathetic in heaven, so that's why we would always be suffering. That's why we would never be happy knowing there are people in hell. But like, does that mean it's a lack on our part that we ever have happy days right now? I don't know, just a question. It's not meant to be a rebuttal, but like, I think there has to be like some theory that's elucidated of when and how we're allowed to be happy in relation to the suffering of others. Anyways, 3, do you think you could accept Jesus and be saved after you die? No, I do not. If not, why not? Okay, why do I not think that? On scriptural grounds. It seems to not Well, okay. Sorry. If universalism is true, then yes. Then yes, you can. If universalism is false, then it would be like the arguments that would keep me there, keep me on that side of the fence would be scriptural. But like, what is the actual like metaphysical explanation? Like what? Why is it that no one ever actually changes their free will to do that? Well, what I would give is like some sort of account of human nature where like we're just like if we are on average going to rebel against God, okay, like that, I'm going to give some account of human nature where that's the case, and it's only by God like working some like insane probabilistic what I was gonna say like some insane probabilistic magic, but that's not very elucidating what I'm trying to say here. If you look at my video on the Heavenly Rebellion theodicy, maybe that would elucidate things more. But the idea is, if you have that humans always have a non-zero probability of rebelling against God, then God's going to have to jump through some serious hoops to make it so that there are people who never rebel against him. So then the idea is that the people who if people accept Jesus after they died and were saved, then they just rebel again eventually. So the distribution of people who remain in and then I'd add some further explanation, because like about why the process of rebelling against God continually and then being saved and rebelling against God continually, why God's not going to allow that. I feel like I'm getting rambly, so I'm going to try and re-summarize my position. So what I would say is I'd use my Heavenly Rebellion theodicy kind of reasoning to say like, hey, people are going to be rebelling against God on average after a given amount of time, unless God jumps through some hoops. And maybe that hoop involves leaving some people in hell. Okay, so if you do that, then you have to give some, like, I can't actually explain why leaving some people in hell would actually be the hoop that God needs to jump through, because I can't actually explain the psychology of trillion-year-old people. Again, if that doesn't make sense, please check out my original video on the Heavenly Rebellion theodicy. And then I give some defense of why. No, I think that's all I need. Yeah, that's all I need. So that's probably like that's the best answer I have. Again, if you want to give me some pushback and say, well, it seems like, hey, isn't universalism way more plausible than this? I'm going to be like, yeah, I see where you're coming from. But I'm not there yet. Still evaluating. Anyways, question 4. Do you think the religious experiences and miracles that other religions claim are genuine, or only those from Christianity? So I'm fairly skeptical. Like, okay, I know a dude, Caleb Jackson, he talks about a lot of miracle stuff, so maybe he could get me more on board. But generally, just all miracles I'm fairly skeptical about. No matter where. Oh, sorry, have an alarm. Anyways, all religions, all miracles in all religions, I'm fairly skeptical about. Maybe I guess that's just my disposition. But like, I'm open to like saying there are demons who can like perform religions, and that there are like some supernatural miracles in Christianity are true as well. Supernatural miracle, that's a bit of a tautology. Like, I am open to there being miracles that are true in Christianity, like people praying and like having like getting instantly cured from diseases, and I'm like open to there being demon miracles caused by demons in other religions. I'm open to all of that. It just given my particular disposition, proving that any particular case in any religion, I'm going to be quite skeptical of it. if you give me a particular case in a Christian setting or in a Hindu setting, I myself am going to be pretty predisposed towards a naturalistic explanation. I guess it's just the way I'm. I guess it's just my disposition, and I guess that like would lead into the question, like, hey, what about Jesus's resurrection? I think that's what this question is getting at. Like, hey, what about Jesus' resurrection? Is there anything that makes it different? Yes, this is the whole point of my argument from popularity. It's like, yes, I think that we could reason about like the sort of things God would want to do, and like, you know, atheists would agree with this if they push divine hiddenness, that God would want to be in a relationship with lots of people, and I think we could go from there to the idea that God would want to establish a worldwide religion. And you know, there's this really suspicious like random Jewish son of a carpenter who just completely transformed the entire world, so I think we should. Oh, and hey, look, there's some really weird stuff surrounding his death that would have some incredibly profound religious implications. So that particular example, I think a miracle actually occurring there is a lot more plausible. Anyways, hopefully that answers the question. Let me explain says, how long does the average video take? About I mentioned this earlier, about every minute you see on screen is probably like an hour of work, excluding research. William Keller asks, what do you think of Majesty of Reason's companions in guilt argument against causal finitism? I think that there is some plausibility to it, and I think that like we theists do also have to just worry about because God's mind is infinite, right? Like we might get into some, unless you're like a full-blown classical theist, you're going to have some worries of your own about like God say having infinite thoughts or infinite desires. Like we theists have to be careful when so quickly like adopting causal finitism, because yeah, we have a lot of companions with infinity because we believe in an infinite God. So I think it has some plausibility to it. I don't know. I that one I have it. Okay. There have been a bunch of people requesting me to actually respond to it, but I haven't put a lot of thought into it. So yeah, maybe I should. Maybe I should like do some more research on its companions and guilt argument and make a response. I'm being very superficial with my response to this one because its companions and guilt video I haven't seen for so long. Anyways, Boomerax Red says, "Congrats, Square." Heart emoji. I wanted to ask a question regarding the cosmological argument, and that is, how does God go from a timeless state of non-creation to a state of creation? And wouldn't that mean that when God made the choice, that choice is dependent of a previous sequence of events? Okay, so time for some unsatisfying answers. So, how does God go from a timeless state of non-creation to a state of creation? So, with God, like everything that he does is just mental causation. So, if you believe in minds, you believe minds can do stuff to the world. Okay, that sort of causation that minds do to the world, that's how God does everything. He just directly does it. So if God wants to, so if you think of like just lifting a rock, if I wanted to lift a rock and if God wanted to lift a rock, how would we do it? My mind would directly cause some physical chain of events that lead to my hand picking up the rock, and that my mind directly doing it is a primitive causation that isn't mediated by any further level of causation, if you're a dualist and you believe in minds. And now in God's case, it's the same kind of causation, but instead of like having the intermediary stuff with an arm, his mental causation just directly causes the rock to rise. Okay, so in the case of God going from a timeless state of non-creation to a state of creation, how does he do it? He just directly causes it to happen. That's how he does it. That's how omnipotence works. Okay, and wouldn't that mean that God made the choice to create? Yes, and that choice is dependent on a previous sequence of events, no, I don't see how that would follow. What you would have to say is like God's choice was made on the basis of reasons, but I don't see how it would have to be based on a sequence of events. Also, I wanted to ask about an objection that has been proposed regarding the fine-tuning argument, and that is, even though the chances of the universe being the way it is astronomically low, what are the chances of God making the universe? Or making it like this? Okay, what are the chances of God making the universe? So that would be the prior probability of theism. So that'd be the argument like, hey, theism is just such an intrinsically improbable view that, even with the fine-tuning argument, you don't actually get all the way to theism. And then you have to talk about what I would get into there are like the things that say that God isn't an intrinsically improbable hypothesis, like it's an incredibly simple hypothesis. Then we have to get to like, what are the chances of God making a universe? Well, then we get into how theism's predictions stem from its axiology. Then when we say, or making it like this, what does that mean? Making it like with a gravitation, like a inverse square law that gravitates matter to other matter? Well, naturalism doesn't predict it either. So when we get to really specific descriptions of the universe, it doesn't matter that theism can't get us a particularly like a super precise definition of, or so we can't deduce from theism a super precise formulation of the laws of physics, because we can't get on that on naturalism either. What we should care about is where the views, where one view outperforms the other. But in cases like, hey, a super precise formulation of the law of physics, or like the fact that cows exist, or just random stuff like that, neither view, we could deduce that from the view a priori. It's only more general facts like, hey, life exists. Oh, that's more probable on theism. Stuff like that. I hope that makes sense. Wouldn't that just make chance more probable? Obviously, I think this is a bad problematic alternative objection, but I just can't come up with a clear-cut answer. Thank you. Oh, I hope you found that clear-cut. If not, send me an email. Silent Soldier asks, in your opinion, is having an infinity in the real world possible? If yes or no, please explain why or why not, provided we follow the definition of John Philoponus and Imam al-Ghazali, that anything susceptible to addition is not infinite. Thanks. I'm not sure how I feel about causal finitism, because like I like I'm very tentative of like attacking the possibility of infinities, because I don't want to get theism caught in the crossfire, because like there are a lot of infinities surrounding theism. So I am a little wary of attacking causal finitism. Now, anything susceptible to addition is not infinite. So that's... I'm not really sure, like, that's not a phrase I'm familiar with, but like I'm thinking of like Hilbert's Hotel right now, and you have infinite people in infinite rooms. And you might think that that is not susceptible to addition, so it's not infinite. Well, I wouldn't agree, because, for example, if we have Hilbert's Hotel and we have like every room's filled with Alice 1, Alice 2, Alice 3, Alice 4, and so on, and then another person shows up and his name's Bob, then was Hilbert's Hotel just susceptible to addition because we have a new person there? It's a person whose name starts with B that was added in, and everyone else in the prior to that had a name that started with A, so then Hilbert's Hotel just got added to. Like, is that susceptible to addition? Like, I need like a I don't know, the analytical philosopher in me is like, no, give me a more precise definition of infinite. Anyways, Job Apologetics says, congrats squared. Q, what got you into full of real apologetics, philosophy of religion / apologetics? Yeah, it was Frank Jurek's book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, at the very beginning. I think that's what started it off. Like, that was the first, my first exposure to philosophy of religion, really speaking. Not to say I endorse the book, I'm just saying that's what started me off. Budgetary Bird 28 says, congrats on 5K. I only got 8 for now. Oh, for a second I thought you meant 8 questions. Oh, sad face. Only 8 subscribers. Question: are you a Christian? Hold up. Is anybody confused about this? Is this a point that needs clarification on? I thought I sorry, I thought I made pretty clear. I am a Christian. It is not. I don't think that's an inappropriate question. I'm just a little surprised by it. I thought that. Is anyone wondering anything else? Like if my head's square or? Anyways, question: when did you make the channel? A couple years ago, I think it's a couple years old at this point. My first video was actually the only political video I made. It was like a video on like the ethics of abortion, and then since that, like that was the one political video I did, and I have not made anything political since. It's a little funny. But yeah, I guess you could just sort my videos by newest and then scroll to the bottom to find the exact age of it. I think it's 3 years. 3 years. That'd be my guess. That's the age of the channel. Question: will you have a gaming channel or other channel? I do want to make a second channel at some point. I work on side projects to like give my brain a break from apologetics so I don't get burned out. So like it'd be cool if I just had like a second channel to like share some of those projects. Like, hey, I made this cool thing. Want to see it? Gaming channel though, I don't know about that. Do you guys want to see Squared just like play chess or something? I don't know. Johnny says, congrats on 5K squared. Are you a metaphysical idealist yet? If not, when will you be? Because it's obviously true. Lol, jokes aside, what are your thoughts on idealism? Pros and cons. So, for my extensive research on idealism, which is not extensive, it has like one pro, which is that it's simpler ontology than dualism. One con, it's less intuitive than dualism. And so it's like, oh, sorry, dropped something. So idealism, it's like it's okay. I mean, it's not without its pros, it's not without its cons, because it has one major pro and one major con. Fun fact, after CCV1, the first conference, the first Capturing Christianity conference, I wanted to test out if direct doxastic voluntarism. I wanted to check if direct doxastic voluntarism was true. So I decided to just will myself to become an idealist, because that didn't seem to me to be a high stakes issue, and I didn't really have much of a stake in it. So I just decided to will myself to be an idealist. And I'm pretty sure I increased my credence quite a bit. I haven't become an idealist. I didn't try very hard to will to be an idealist either. But like, I'm pretty sure I managed to just directly increase my credence in idealism. Anyways, moving on. Little dude says, congratulations on the 5K mark. Got a question. Who is your favorite atheist? Thanks, bro. That'd be Joe Schmid from Majesty of Reason. I'm kidding. It's a joke because, like, you know, there's that definition of atheists where it like includes like people who just lack a belief. And Joe Schmid technically lacks a belief in God's existence because he's an agnostic, but that's not the right definition of atheism. So if I ever say Joe Schmid, it's funny, I guess. One guy who I've had some good interactions with that I guess I'll give a shout out is he goes by on YouTube Deliberation Under Ideal Conditions. Like every interaction I've had with him has been pretty respectful and good natured. So I like him, and like he's like if anybody can't put a face to a name, he's utilitarianism, dude. He just really likes utilitarianism. But like, yeah, he seems cool, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. I guess somebody whose content I was a little bit more familiar with is Cosmic Skeptic, but I want to give a shout out to, like, you know, somebody who doesn't actually have a lot of following. Um, but I'm not. I should clarify my interactions with deliberation under ideal conditions have been a little have been few and also relatively far back in the distant past. But yeah, he was cool when I interacted with him. Anyways, Arma says, will you stop using the cringe word coolio? By the way, I like your videos a lot. No, I will not stop using it. It is the best word. It's very coolio. Yeah. Matthew Fernley says, congratulations on 5K. Do you have any recommended Christianity, apologetics, or counter-apologetics channels? Sure. I recommended a bunch of philosophy of religion channels earlier, so all of them. Testify, I want to include. His channel is nice because it's very resurrection based, which is, it's kind of, I'm a little bit of a hypocrite for saying this, but like apologetics channels are a little too focused on theism and not focused enough on the resurrection. I know, coming from me, right? But it's true. Like we need more good resurrection based apologetics channels. So yeah, he gotta recommend him. Counter apologetics channels. Like, this is annoying because like my favorite like counter apologetics has probably come from Joe Schmid, because like I don't know, I just really like the way he like interacts with arguments for Christianity. Like he doesn't like whenever he talks about the person, it's like to tell you how much he values them like as a human, like as a person. And then besides that, he doesn't bring up the person again and just focus specifically at the issues at hand. Unless it's Edward Fazer. Yeah, that was a joke. That was, well, anyways, Cosmic Skeptic, he's also been quite like that. Like, those are like the 10, I mean, those are the kinds of apologetics and counter apologetics I tend to enjoy more. Like, there's like the argument from David Wood, like, not all apologetics channels should be like nice and respectful and all that. And like, I kind of see the argument there, like, but all counter apologetics channels largely, I shouldn't say all, there are far more like counter apologetics channels that seem to like follow David's line of reasoning than there are apologetics channels in my experience. And like, I just generally prefer the channels that are like just focused on the arguments. So I tend to channels more like Majesty of Reason, but he's annoying because like he's not actually an atheist. See, Majesty of Reason should be an atheist just so that I can, when people ask me who's my favorite atheist, I could say Majesty of Reason. Matthew Fernley also adds, it may or may not be possible to recommend counter apologetics channels while also thinking the channel owner should probably want to delete it. Okay, so haha, Matthew, I see what you're doing. Yes. So that, just to clarify, my video that atheists should delete their channels, it's not actually me trying to get them to delete their channels. It's mostly me just thinking, hey, people like in the counter apologetics sphere have not adequately responded to Pascal's wager, so I could just kind of like reformulate the argument and get it up and running again. So I want to hear some actual responses to Pascal's wager other than, oh, I just can't choose what to believe. Because that doesn't, like my point of the original video of like, or my most viewed video, should atheists delete their channels, was that just saying, hey, I can't choose my beliefs, that does nothing to stop the underlying logic of the argument. Because I could just tweak it and then boom, I have another argument with a conclusion that is very radical. So yeah, and then like, that's why I like Rationality Rules' response. Hey, there's a channel. I like his response to my video, should atheists delete their channels, because he actually is like, hey, here's a reason why you should throw out decision theory. Oh, okay. Now that's a real response to Pascal's wager. Not just like a flimsy response like, I can't choose my beliefs. Because if you say, let's just throw out decision theory, that completely guts the argument, and I can't at that point I can't like redirect it or parody it to get it alive again. So that's what my goal was. But I think, like throwing out decision theory is bad, so then Pascal's wager works and is good. Anyways, but yeah. I hope I answered that question adequately. I'm going to move on to Amo Hassan. They say, hi, a friend keeps telling me God is just a lazy or easy way to find an answer to the creation of the universe. How would you answer that? How would you answer to that? I'd first say that, like, it's not just the creation of the universe that points to a God. It's a bunch of things that point to the existence of God, like morality, consciousness, free will, so on and so forth. And I'd love to talk about all of those things. And the other thing is just like, what do you mean it's an easy answer? I guess lazy is like, oh, you haven't considered other alternatives. Like, is that what you mean by lazy? Okay, let's talk about alternatives to theism. If you mean easy, I think that's a good thing. Like, if a classic example of, hey, you have to find the relationship between y and x. When x is 1, y is 1. When x is 2, y is 2. When x is 3, y is 3. Saying x equals y is a relationship between x and y is a very easy answer, but it's also the correct one. Like, that's probably the conclusion you should draw based off of the data I just gave you. So maybe it's a good thing that's an easy answer. Okay. Now, Linus Flavius says, which interpretation of the blow theory is the most accurate from your perspective? Why? Premillennialism, dispensationalism, postmillennialism, or amillennialism? So I would have said amillennialist because I'm just like kind of agnostic, and amillennialism just kind of fits best with being agnostic and not really sure of what's going on. I guess that's being tongue in cheek. But like Inspiring Philosophy, he gave a pretty good defense of postmillennialism in one of his more recent videos. So, hey, that's a channel I could recommend. So, yeah, maybe I'd lean towards postmillennialism based off of that right now. Jay Victor asks, do you play some video games? If yes, which? Recently I've played Civilization 6, like Sid Meier's Civilization 6 a bit. But it's just so time consuming. Like, those games last forever. But like even on the quickest like setting. But yeah, I played that a bit. So if that counts. Played chess. That's another thing, I guess. 2048. Boom. Minesweeper. I love myself some Minesweeper. Anyways, moving up. Mr. Lewis here says, congratulations. Why doesn't your cumulative case for Christianity playlist even mention Jesus once? So that's not technically accurate. In my part 0 of the series, I explain, maybe I don't actually say the word Jesus, but like I explain, like, hey, I'm going to talk about theism a whole bunch, and then I'm going to switch to discussing Christianity in particular after I'm done talking about theism. And so I discussed that, and since part 0, I've been just discussing theism. And I have a lot to say about arguments for theism, because I think, arguments for theism touch on like almost everything in philosophy. But yeah, Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming. He's coming. But also, me discussing Jesus in my Cumulative Christianity series playlist thing, that is also coming. Okay, S. Lockwood Childs asks, question, what is your favorite apologetics argument against the extremely skeptical Jesus mythicism view? Okay, so that one's weird. Like, Jesus mythicism. So, like, basically I just ask, okay, so here's the data. We have, like, an early church forming around the teachings of this one man, and, like, a bunch of accounts of this man named Jesus. Okay, what is the hypothesis that you have that better explains the data? Like that's what my where my brain goes. Like, I have this hypothesis that seems to fit the data pretty nicely. What's your hypothesis? Because like I instead of like giving just like a knockdown apologetics argument, I'd like to get into like this person's epistemology here, because like it is extremely skeptical. It's weird. I'm kind of weirded out. How did you um like yeah, how did you come to this conclusion? I want to know like your like the inner workings of your brain on this topic. Philosophically inclined Christian Crusader asks another question. What are your thoughts on Naturalism's Next critique of the argument from psychophysical harmony? I think it's probably the best they have this huge document. It's basically like an essay, or no, longer than most essays I've read. I guess, why am I calling it an essay? It's an article. They have an article. I got, my brain wanted to call it an essay for some reason. Anyways, they have an article critiquing the argument from psychophysical harmony. It's the best criticism out there to date, bar none. And my thoughts on it are like, they come up with some clever stuff there. I'm gonna give them some credit where credit's due. But I have some tricks up my sleeve. I have some ways of countering the objections they've raised. Like so often in the article, they're like, the proponents of psychophysical harmony has some work to do here if they want to get the argument off the ground. Well, I am ready to do that work, let me tell you. Tenek Salvarez says, are you a theistic evolutionist or a young earth creationist? Again, like, I'm a philosophy nerd. I haven't really looked into like fossils and radiometric dating and all that, but like I lean theistic evolutionist because like the type of people who have epistemologies like mine tend to skew theistic evolutionist, and the arguments I have heard, they seem to be somewhat less ad hoc with the theistic evolutionism side of the spectrum, so I tend to lean there. But that, again, I like the reason why I'm using like this cautionary language instead of just saying just saying straightforward I'm a theistic evolutionist is because I haven't studied this myself in depth very much. It's all like second order evidence instead of first order evidence, and that's what that language is meant to reflect, not a credence. Anyways, last question here, also from Tenek Selvarez, says, here's a list of questions. What is intuition? It's the when something strikes you as just seeming to be true. It's pre-theoretic, fancy word. How does it work? You entertain a proposition and it just strikes you as true. How much can we trust it? Okay, that's a good question. I think we use it as our starting point, and from there we update. So like maybe your intuition starts you off at 90%, then evidence can like decrease it down to 10% or up to 100%, or maybe it starts you at 50% or whatever. It's just your starting point. That's how I take evolution or intuition. And another way of thinking about intuition is like you have like epistemic priority in your beliefs. For example, like you base your belief that it's going to rain tomorrow on the fact that your weather app says that it'll rain tomorrow and you trust your weather app. Okay, what do you base those beliefs on? What do you base? And then you give me your reasoning. Okay, what do you base that belief on? What do you base that belief on? And so on and so forth. And then sometimes you'll always get to like, if I follow the chain long enough, assuming you're not reasoning in a circle, I'll get to some belief that isn't based on a prior belief. And that might be based on experience. For example, my belief that an apple is red, that can be based on the experience of me just seeing the apple and seeing that it's red. But sometimes a belief isn't based on an experience. Like if you just consider the concept of like a thought experiment, and like you think, oh, in the thought experiment, Jim acted immorally. That's not based on experience, but it's not based on a further belief either. So that thing, and we could just use intuition to like pick out anything that isn't an experience of the external world, but isn't based on a further belief. And like, I like that way of like defining intuition, because I think it tracks with our usage of the word intuition in philosophy pretty well, and just in like common everyday usage. So that's like a definition I would prefer. Anyways, that's it. That's all 78 comments responded to. Coolio. I'm not signed in right now. That's funny. Oh, that's why all the comments aren't liked. Oh, everyone just thinks I didn't like any of the comments. No, every comment here has like at least one like, because I liked all of them. Anyways, that's the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Probably not as high quality as my other videos, because I'm used to scripted stuff, but I hope you enjoyed this. I want to give a big thanks to everybody who has supported the channel, either maybe through Patreon, but maybe even something as simple as subscribing or even watching a video. I'd like to thank you all very much. Really appreciate where this channel's come, and I hope to grow it even more, do even more awesome stuff. So yeah, that's the end of this video. I'll see you in the next one.